Well, they can't all be good. No, I'm not listing the worst movies of 2023. That's not what this list is all about. And I'm not sure if I'm really qualified to judge what's worse than something else, and I don't really pay attention to box office or anything like that. But this is a list compiled of films that disappointed me the most in 2023. That means, for one reason or another, I was looking forward to this film, or heard good things, or simply liked the premise or the trailer, only to find my expectations rode hard and put away wet. So while I mend those tender expectations, here's a list to commemorate the end of 2023. Welcome back to ML Miller Frights. I'm ML Miller. Before we begin, please do me a favor and punch that like button down below. Share this video with all of your social media addicted pals. Click subscribe to this channel and ring that bell for notifications. Here are 13 horror films that disappointed me the most in 2023. In no particular order. Night of the Hunted is streaming on Shudder. It's directed by Franck Khalfoun and written by Rubén Ávila, Calvo, Glen Freyer, and Franck Khalfoun. Looking for the horror movie equivalent of an idiotic political debate taking place on a message board without a monitor? That's exactly what Night of the Hunted is. A woman finds herself trapped in a gas station with a sniper outside. Through walkie-talkies, the woman chats endlessly with the sniper, debating everything from gun control, abortion rights, immigration, the job market, and pretty much any other divisive topic one can think of. No one's likable in this movie. It doesn't help that the first time we see the woman is in a hotel bathroom while she's talking with her husband on the phone via text about having children while her lover takes a shower in the background. Somehow we're supposed to sympathize with her simply because of her set of core beliefs about hot-button issues. Night of the Hunted was an interesting setup, but man, the film is like switching channels between Fox News and MSNBC for 2 hours. This is one of those films that wants to convey a powerful message, but forgets to make the movie interesting enough to keep watching. Dear David is available on demand and digital download from Lionsgate. It's directed by John McPhail and written by Adam Ellis, Evan Turner, and Mike Van Waes. If you missed or forgot the series of tweets released by Adam Ellis a few years ago that sparked a social media sensation, I'll remind you right now. Adam Ellis began seeing the ghost of a young boy named David in his apartment and began charting this phenomenon online. The story is absolutely compelling. As furniture is moved, the cats begin interacting with something outside of the doorway, and Ellis captures some bone-chilling images of this small boy stalking him in his sleep. When I heard this story was being made into a movie, I was ecstatic. Surely this would be an awesome movie, right? Wrong. Somehow, instead of adapting the story simply from the source material, the filmmakers behind Dear David decided it was a great idea to smoosh in a message about the dangers of online trolling, making the ghost of David the ultimate message board monitor who tracks down trolls and teaches a lesson to them for their harsh criticism. Yes, Ellis probably has some strong feelings about those who criticize from behind a monitor, as he does work in a profession that constantly gets comments. But making a movie fueled by those feelings and ignoring the chilling aspects of the story itself is inexcusable. On top of that, the climax is explosive and over the top, and everything the original tale is not. Just seek out some great videos on YouTube charting the original story. In my opinion, the paranormal channel Cadaver describes it the most effectively, and I'll provide a link below for that coverage. Watch that and just ignore this total misfire of a movie. It's a Wonderful Knife is streaming on Shudder from RLJE Films. It's directed by Tyler Macintyre and written by Michael Kennedy, Seth Caplan, and Daniel Bekerman. Man, this is a stinker. Aside from the twist on the title and the plot that the lead is thrust into an alternate universe where she never existed, It's a Wonderful Knife really has nothing to do with the Christmas classic It's a Wonderful Life. All of the lessons learned by George Bailey in the original are lost to those behind and in front of the camera. In this new film, the lesson the lead learns is that she's a lesbian, and once that happens, every other problem in her life is solved. On top of that, none of this film makes a lick of sense, as when the lead returns to her reality, her lover inexplicably remembers everything that happened in the other reality. Because reasons. The lead is a charisma vacuum and utterly generic. There's no real tension, a bit of blood, but not enough, and a whole lot of plot holes wide enough to drive a monster truck through. Even the slasher's look is uninspired and way too much like Scream, which is exactly what this movie desperately wants to be. The only shining star of the film is Justin Long, who seems to be the only one trying to do anything even remotely interesting. Avoid this one like the plague. Totally Killer is streaming on Amazon Prime. It's directed by Nahnatchka Khan. Chaka Khan. And written by David Matalon, Sasha Perl-Raver, and Jen D'Angelo. You know what I want in a horror movie? A lead who corrects, puts down, castigates, and looks down her snout towards everything about an entire generation. Kiernan Shipka is a marvelous actress and always gives an interesting performance, but this film missed the boat entirely. As with It's a Wonderful Knife, Totally Killer is a modern slasher version of Back to the Future. But while Marty McFly traveled back in time and learned some valuable lessons he can apply to his own life, having experienced how his younger parents were at his age, Shipka's character is only affirmed when she goes back in time and sees that everything about her parents' generation needs a good criticism and course correction. As with It's a Wonderful Knife, Totally Killer misses the point of the movie it is emulating, only to make sure it panders to the current generation and says how great it is. On top of that, the stupid Johnny Bravo mask isn't scary in the least. I know a lot of people like this film, but honestly, I have no idea why. The Lair is streaming on Shudder. It's directed by Neil Marshall and written by Charlotte Kirk and Neil Marshall. Man, what happened to Neil Marshall? He did The Descent, Dog Soldiers, and I even liked Doomsday quite a bit for the Mad Max knockoff that it was. But ever since his abysmal Hellboy, followed by The Reckoning and now The Lair, the man's been off his game big time. I don't want to blame Charlotte Kirk, as she is somewhat of a solid yet rather emotionless actress, but ever since the two have become a couple, the wind seems to have left Marshall's sails. In The Lair, Kirk plays a bony yet highly proficient pilot in the Royal Air Force who's shot down over Afghanistan. She takes up with an American military unit, and in order to avoid detection from the enemy, Kirk and the boys take shelter in an underground bunker. The bunker turns out to be a lab housing alien-human hybrids that sort of look like xenomorphs after someone took a blowtorch to their faces and costumes. All of the gruff character that Dog Soldiers overflowed with is absent. The claustrophobic pants-shitting tension that The Descent is riddled with is gone. It's just a pale conglomeration of The Descent and Dog Soldiers told without any of the elements that made those two films great. Bury the Bride is streaming on Tubi. It's directed by Spider-One and written by Krsy Fox and Spider-One. Talk about stinkers. Rob Zombie's brother, Spider-One, made his directorial debut with last year's surprisingly unnerving Allegoria. That film is everything Rob Zombie's films weren't. Sure, Allegoria starred Spider-One's partner, Krsy Fox, reflective of Zombie's tendency to cast his own wife, Sherry Moon, in every one of his films, but Allegoria was well-paced, truly shocking, interestingly written, and put together in a professional way. It was also scary as hell. Those are words I wouldn't use to describe Rob Zombie's work. Unfortunately, Spider-One's second film, Bury the Bride, has all of the weaknesses of Rob Zombie's films and then some. It's about a group of party gals who get together for a bachelorette party getaway in a house in the desert. June, played by Scout Taylor Compton, is the bride-to-be, and Krsy Fox plays June's sister, who's suspicious at how quick this romance has moved to nuptials. But in the middle of their bachelorette festivities, the bachelors crash the party and, well, they turn out to be more than just drunken frat guys. Cheaply made, shoddily acted, predictably written with more holes than you can count. I mean, are we to believe June has never met her husband-to-be during the daytime when the sun is out? It's just a dumb premise from the beginning to the over-talky end. Spider-1 can put together a few decent scenes that look cool, just like his brother. Mainly in Bury the Bride, it's the scene where one of the girls drunkenly dances in the headlights of the bachelor's trucks. I'm hoping the next Spider-1 film is less like his brother's work and more like his first movie, Allegoria. It's best left to keep Bury the Bride buried. Ennis Men is streaming on Hulu. It's directed and written by Mark Jenkin. Here's a movie critics jizzed all over when it was released, stating that it's the scariest thing since the last time I tried to make my own meal in the kitchen. It's basically about a woman who survived some kind of assault, attempting to work out her issues on a secluded island all by herself. But even that isn't made all too clear in this loosely threaded plot. Ennis Men flew right over my head. Long droning scenes of the woman looking out over the ocean, strange robed characters wandering the countryside, more staring, more standing, more shots of wildlife and some kind of well, and a woman standing on the roof of a house, and the wind blowing and the radio faintly playing in the background. While I liked Men, which came out last year and was also considered elevated horror, Ennis Men is just overly obtuse and felt like an endurance test rather than anything resembling an entertaining movie. Elevator Game is streaming on Shudder. It's directed by Rebecca McKendry and written by David Ian McKendry and Travis Sepala. Following her glorious debut film, Glorious, former Fangoria editor Rebecca McKendry stumbles with her follow-up involving another enclosed space in Elevator Game. The main issue with this film is that it's all about the Elisa Lam case at the Cecil Hotel, but seem to have failed to get permission to mention the case or the hotel in the film at all. With a case so compelling and full of mystery, one would think a great horror movie could be made about it. Instead, we get a group of pretty people activating a curse in an elevator and being stalked by a ghost afterwards. This one really lacks any kind of gravitas as the kids overreact and fight for very little reason, solely to get them split up so they can die one at a time. Not enough thought seems to be put into the bland characters or what motivates them, making their deaths mean nothing. I just don't get it. This is one of those films with a premise so full of promise, but the opportunity was missed big time. Insidious the Red Door, aka Insidious 5, is streaming on Netflix. It's directed by Patrick Wilson and written by Lee Wanell and Scott Teems. While I loved the first Insidious, as the rest of the series played out, the films decreased in grabbing me more and more. Insidious the Red Door is the latest and hopefully the last installment in the Insidious series. The previous couple of films steered away from the Lambert family, who was tormented in parts 1 and 2, instead following paranormal expert Elise Rayner, played by Lynn Shay, and her bumbling investigator cohorts. So I was hopeful that checking back in on the Lamberts might bring some new life to this series. Returning is Rose Byrne and all of the kids from the previous films, including Ty Simpkins, who was tormented by the pants-shittingly scary red and black demon in the first. Also returning, not only to star, but also to direct, and even provide the song that plays over the credits, is Patrick Wilson. While Wilson has proved to be a fine actor, it felt the timing during a lot of the scare sequences was off. The biggest scare was ruined by being featured prominently in the trailer. It doesn't help that Simpkins has the bulk of the screen time, with Rose Byrne and Wilson being shuffled off as supporting players. The problem is that Byrne and Wilson are so much more interesting, with Simpkins simply playing a floppy-haired introvert at one of the most generic art colleges one can imagine. Those classroom sequences are just painful. He's also paired off with a roommate played by Sinclair Daniel, who's given so many unforgettably cringy lines. What plays out is pretty much the end of Insidious 2 all over again, It demystifies the Red Demon and turns into some kind of X-Men story where Simpkins attempts to control his astral projection powers, while forgetting to focus on more interesting things like character, suspense, and tension. On top of that, the final song pairing Patrick Wilson with the metal band Ghost that plays over the credits is an affront to ears everywhere. Cocaine Bear is streaming on Amazon Prime from Universal Pictures. It's directed by Elizabeth Banks and written by Jimmy Warden. Like many of you, I was pumped to see Cocaine Bear after watching the awesomely edited trailer, but not only did the trailer show most of the decent bits, it failed to communicate that beyond the concept, the movie really didn't do anything creative or entertaining with that concept. Instead, it just repeats the phrase, "It's a bear on cocaine," over and over as its only joke. And repeating the concept over and over and expecting a laugh every time does not a movie make. I guess I just wanted the movie to go off the deep end and really do some gonzo shit. Instead, I got lame jokes, rough acting from Ice Cube's kid and Kerry Russell, and a film that plays it safe all the way through. I was so disappointed in this one. Knock at the Cabin is streaming on Peacock from Universal Pictures. It's directed by M. Night Shyamalan and written by M. Night Shyamalan, Steve Desmond, Michael Sherman, and based on Paul Tremblay's book, The Cabin at the End of the World. Aside from Dave Bautista's compelling performance, Knock at the Cabin is another movie with an interesting concept, but a dreadful execution. A group of people show up at the home of a gay couple and their adoptive daughter, offering them a choice: kill one of their family members in order to save the world. It's an interesting concept, but what transpires is dull as dirt. It's hard when the bulk of the action of your movie only plays out over news reports, playing over the television, and the whole cast simply watches and reacts to it. That's boring. And yes, it's got a decent cast, including Mindhunter's Jonathan Groff, Harry Potter's Rupert Grint, and the aforementioned Bautista, so the words spoken back and forth are often strong. It just doesn't carry the movie, and this movie depended on these performances to do so. Basically, this is a film about belief, but unfortunately, I just didn't believe any of these characters. They're just chess pieces moved around, interrupted by sporadic news reports. Yawn. Someone needs to make a law and enforce it in Hollywood that movies should be more than simply their concept mapped out in a well-edited trailer. The Exorcist Believer is available on demand and digital download from Universal Pictures. It's directed by David Gordon Green and written by Oeter Sattler, David Gordon Green, Scott Teems, Danny McBride, and based on characters created by William Peter Blatty. Had The Exorcist Believer ended at the hour mark, I think not only myself, but everyone else would have reacted differently to this sequel of one of the scariest movies of all time. The first hour is compelling, with the two girls going missing in the woods and stumbling upon some kind of evil when they try to contact a dead parent. Everything up to the hospital scene is quite disturbing, well-paced, decently acted, and filled with an air of mystery and imposing dread. Then they card in Ellen Burstyn in one of the most shameful stunt castings you'll ever see. What happens to this actress is unforgivable. There's also another blast from the past for no real reason in the last reel, but the worst part is the final exorcism performed by a Fellowship of the Ring group of religious avengers as Catholics, voodoo priestesses, Baptists, and God knows what other religions team up to take on Pazuzu, I guess. The only thing I'm thankful for is that David Gordon Green showed his cards early in this series, rather than crapping the bed in the last film, like he did with the Halloween franchise. Like Jaws, The Exorcist should not be touched. Green proved it right this year. Finally, we've got Skinnamarink. Streaming on Hulu and Shudder, it's directed and written by Kyle Edward Ball. Possibly the most divisive film this year, and I'm on the side that mainly disliked it, is Skinnamarink. I will give it to this movie. There's a wonderful sense of dread and impending doom that director Kyle Edward Ball provides. There are moments that had me chilled to the bone, but mostly because I was overwhelmed with anticipation for what lies just around that dark corner or down that dimly lit hallway. The main problem is that while the mood is set and the imagery is often frightening, the film never delivers any kind of plot, conflict, or resolution. Sure, it's interesting that this movie can exude feelings of paranoia with very little but a static camera on weird things, but if there's very little context to it, it's just celluloid masturbation. This is the film I think critics feel they have to like, but I'm betting if they were truly honest, they'd be as annoyed and disappointed with Skinnamarink as I was, but I think they're afraid to say it. Well, I'm not. I understand seeing it in a theater may have made it better, but if I had done that, I never would have been able to hear any of the lines that are barely audible in the first place. So I watched the movie at home, and I had the closed captions print out the words on the screen. And even with that, the movie proved to be vague as all get out. I often tip my hat to art house films, but I ended up being disappointed with so much about this movie. Especially the way critics heaped praise on the movie without really letting people know that this isn't a mainstream film, and let's be honest, most people don't like art house films. Skinnamarink is a low budget art house film filled with pretentiousness and meanings so vague one can adhere any kind of meaning to it. Not a fan. Ugh. Gack. Patoo. Well, I'm glad we got this list over with, so I can never think about these films again. Tell me how wrong I am about the movies I listed here, or give me your least favorite or most disappointing movies you saw in 2023 down in the comments. I have one more list to get to as we ring in the new year. As you can tell by the way my voice sounds, I'm not really 100% right now, and I'm suffering from a bit of a cold, so I'll try to get the final countdown out before New Year's, but most likely it'll come out right after. Either way, I'll see you soon, and happy holidays to you.
You're doomed to live the life you're meant to be, stuck inside your reality. You're doomed. Oh, you're doomed. You're doomed. You're doomed. Live the life that you are meant to be. Live inside that reality.